It's the festive season, and that means there's always a bottle of bubbles in the fridge ready to be popped. In today's podcast, we'll be discussing the 3 mistakes made when enjoying your favourite fizz. Welcome to the podcast Wine Matters. I'm your host, Wendy Laureti, the accidental winery owner of Saddles Creek Wines. In this podcast, I invite you to join me as I share with you what I believe is the true meaning of loving wine, and that is to bring people together. I'm absolutely no wine expert, though I am a wine lover. I love to learn and explore all things wine, how it's made and how it is best enjoyed. What I've discovered along the way is the more I learn, is the more I enjoy and appreciate it. So I'd like to share with you what I've learned along the way, debuff some of the myths, but most importantly, I invite you along to learn with me. To support our learning, I'll be inviting way more knowledgeable people than myself to share their expertise, their love of wine, and why wine matters to them. I hope to introduce you to all the reasons to love wine and all the interesting and great people of the Hunter Valley and the greater wine community. So on that note, let's pour a glass of wine and talk Wine Matters. Cheers. So welcome to episode 2 of Wine Matters, and today my guest is Szabo, who will be talking all the technical and all the expertise of what we're going to be discussing. So hi Deb.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm great. So talking all things bubbles today. So I've bought a selection of sparkling wines along.
Lovely.
So I'm thinking today we're actually going to go for a bit of pink.
Okay, let's do it, Deb.
Now, the reason why I'm choosing this wine is because this is a low alcohol wine. So we at Saddlers, you've got 4 different sparklings on the go at the moment. I'm just taking off the...
we can see the back of the label, not the front.
I know.
The front's so pretty.
I know, but I can't open it that hand. The page. But the reason why I've chosen this one, it's pink, and who doesn't love a bit of pink?
It's so good, isn't it?
Is okay, so when opening a bottle, often people will actually just flick the cork up, and that can be a really dangerous thing. So when opening a bottle of sparkling wine, I just want you to turn it and turn the actual bottle. So hold the cork really in, and you actually turn the bottle itself. And I'm actually doing it with my other hand for this purpose. And there's that beautiful sound.
There you go.
Don't you love that sound?
It is a winner.
Okay.
And we'll be discussing that a little bit later today.
We do
I'm going
have
to ask you
stories.
some questions about that, honey.
Yeah.
And share some funny stories.
I'll listen to that sound. For anyone that's not watching the video version of this podcast, we are actually pouring some nice pink bubbles. Cheers, Wendy.
Cheers, honey. This is one of the best things about a sparkling wine. There's 0 rules about what time of day you can crack it open.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers, honey.
Okay. So 3 mistakes.
3 mistakes
that people often make when they are consuming sparkling.
I know my number one
mistake.
It's not having enough. Underestimating what people will enjoy. Because even if I think of my Italian family that I have, who will say, oh, no, I don't drink much.
They always have a glass of bubbles.
When there's a good bubbles in front of them,
yeah,
people just love it.
Yeah.
And especially it's a celebration drink, so people just lean in and love it and enjoy it. So I think that's the number one mistake. Do not underestimate just how much.
And that's so true, because whenever we do wine dinners together and I calculate how much wine we'll need, I always double the bubbles.
We double the bubbles.
Double the bubbles.
Because it's just such a great welcoming drink.
Yeah.
And people just love it.
Yeah.
It's so easy. Because it is an easy... Why do you think it's an easy one to drink?
Well, because the bubbles are refreshing.
That's it.
It cleanses the palate. It's like sorbet. It's a really nice way to cleanse the palate, which is often why this one that I've actually poured for you has a little hint of residual sweetness on it. And I'll often serve this at the end of a wine dinner with dessert to refresh the palate.
I think this is one of the winners as the dessert wine for me as well. It's really good. But interestingly, why people enjoy it too, I think comes into our number 2 mistake that people make, and that's the serving temperature.
All the time.
So tell me about the serving temperature, Deb. What's the ideal?
My ideal is the colder the better. So often people serve it too warm, and there is nothing worse than having it's like drinking warm beer. And I guess
it is exactly like drinking warm beer. That's the best. That's a really good analogy.
And if you're English and you drink that in England, so that's your jam. That's but in Australia, no one wants to drink warm beer.
It needs to be cold.
No one wants to.
So when we say cold, are we talking?
Okay, so most fridges are about 4 degrees. Okay, For me, if I have a bottle of bubbles in the fridge, and especially when people are opening and closing, think of the festive season, everyone's in and out, that bottle of bubbles is going to sit up around 6 degrees. So what I tend to do just before people are coming over, I will take out the bottle of bubbles from the fridge and I'll pop it in the freezer just to ice it right down. Alternatively, is you would take it out of the fridge and then put it in an ice bucket, making sure that it's submerged in icy water, not just sitting on, and that's the other mistake I see. People will take a bottle of bubbles out, they'll put it on an ice bucket and they'll just sit it on ice. They don't submerge it in there. And of course, that's going to help bring it to temperature again as well. So if you are putting it in an ice bucket, I always add ice and then some water.
That's a really good tip. We honestly, we made that mistake the other day because sometimes I think you want to be prepared as well. And we often pour our if you've got guests coming, we want to pour our sparklings in advance. And the potential error there can be that if it sits too long as well, it just gets too warm and you're just not serving it at its ideal temperature.
And this time of year, it's warm.
I think that's really important because, it can drop its temperature. Now, if it's a hot day, a 40 degrees day outside, it's dropping temperature. Or
even inside.
Increasing temperature really quickly.
Absolutely. Now, the wine that I've popped on the table here, this is the Bluegrass Sparkling, which is actually a sparkling red made from Cabernet. And you'll notice that this wine, the other mistake, if you serve this wine too warm, it's going to literally explode everywhere. And I know that we've had people come back to us and go, oh, my God, that wine's went everywhere, and that's because I served it too warm. And often people think, oh, it's a red wine, I don't need to chill it. No, you absolutely. In fact, I would stress that this needs to be colder than your white wine, really cold.
I think so too, absolutely. And it is honestly one of my absolute favourites, this one.
The Bluegrass Sparkling.
It is
I love
unbelievable.
So when you're talking before about not having enough, that's why you need the magnum size of that.
That's right. We do have this in a magnum size, don't we? Which is it's great for the festive season. Great Christmas Day drink. Perfect with your lamb.
Lamb?
Absolutely.
Do you have lamb on Christmas Day?
Yes. Don't you? Oh, damn. Oh, damn. Of course we have lamb on Christmas Day.
I was thinking ham with that.
Oh, with ham.
Baked ham.
We have ham and lamb.
Ham and lamb.
And chicken and turkey and I don't know how,
everything.
We have the works. It's Italian lasagna, pasta, seafood.
Really?
It goes all day.
You must take days to cook all of that. Yeah.
It's just what it is. We love it.
I love it.
It's all good. It's all good. So that's temperature, Deb.
Yeah.
What's our number 3 mistake?
Okay, so you've opened the bottle of bubbles, and now it's a rare occasion that you don't drink at all, of course, but there are times that you then move on to something else, or you just pop it back in the fridge. Okay, so you've opened it.
And then I'm so confused with this conversation.
Okay,
so
let's just say there's 2 people.
I can't imagine.
You poured a glass each, and then you go to pop it back in the fridge to keep it cold.
Right. You put a spoon in it.
Do you put a spoon in it?
Absolutely.
Do you put a spoon in it?
Of course, that's what I was told.
Okay, never. I'm just throwing that over there because that's as useful as it is. A spoon will not do anything. Wendy, stop using a spoon. Anyone listening, if you are using a spoon when you're storing your sparkling wine, you're wasting your time. You need a wine stopper.
Okay.
Or a champagne stopper, as they're called. You can go down to the supermarket, $2, $3. Okay. No more spoon. Spoon, no.
Does not work.
Does not work.
Does not add any value.
No value whatsoever. So champagne stopper.
Of course, your first option is have a few friends over.
Okay.
It's a create a connection.
But let's
finish that bottle.
But it might just be you and me.
It might.
And I'm popping that back in the fridge.
That's a bottle popper.
So you need to
a bottle stopper.
Champagne stopper.
Okay. There you go.
Okay.
Now, Deb, my next question is, and I think this is really a bit of a mistake as well that we often make, is when we go, what is the difference? Often people believe that champagne is better than sparkling. There's a huge perception out there that, it's a special occasion, let me get the champagne.
Yeah, great
not
question.
The sparkling. So is that a fallacy? Is that the truth? What do you think?
I think, look, champagne is where it all began. And if you ask, any French person, they're always going to say champagne is better than any other sparkling wine in the world. Okay. And I think there's also for us a little bit of, it's an achievement. It's a celebration that people will go to reach for their favorite brand names of sparkling wine, and there's two in particular that I always think of. And if you've got a boat Moet or Verve, it's like, yeah, we're drinking champagne. Okay. However, there are, I think, so many incredible Australian sparkling wines that will leave those two wines. Yeah. Yeah.
I think so too. I think we underestimate just how fabulous our winemaking is in Australia.
We have incredible
Absolutely
sparkling
incredible
wines.
wine. Absolutely, it's incredible wines. And we were just talking just before this episode, and we were talking about why are they all non-vintage versus vintage. So can we just talk that a little bit as well, because that's interesting to me as well, and I didn't really understand that before becoming a.
So without going into too much detail today about how champagne is made versus sparkling wine, essentially you can buy a champagne and it has to be made from 3 grape varieties from the appellation of Champagne, okay? And then it has to be made in a certain way. It has to be what they call method champenois, traditional. So it has to be stored for at least 18 months and then it'll go through the process. And like I said, I can talk about how champagne is made for days. We're not here to do that. What we are doing is that on the label you will see method champenois or method traditional, okay? And that means it's made according to those standards. So for us, when we look at in Australia, we can make sparkling wine again from any grape variety we like. We've got one here from Cabernet. We've got one here from Muscatella Grain. We've got one here from Semillon. And I've got one here which is actually made from Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which are 2 of the champagne grapes. Now, the thing about these wines are, in Australia, we don't have those rules. However, if you were looking at the label, I always look at how long they've been on lees for, and a good bottle of sparkling wine that is made in a traditional sense, they'll leave it on lees for the Chardonnay Pinot Noirs, for example. Okay. And so what you get then is that age complexity. So we're talking about vintage versus non-vintage. So most sparkling wines, you go into the bottle shop, and especially the bigger name brands, they'll all be a cuvee, they'll be a non-vintage.
And I love that you were saying before, you'll always look at you'll see your champagnes up here, but then you'll go down low and have a look at what else.
If I go into a bottle shop and I'm like, I want to buy something interesting, I never look at eye level. I'll look at the bottom shelf, and that's where you find the interesting things, because a lot of the champagne houses, and I spent a few days touring Champagne region and going to Epernay, and I went and had a private tour in Moet and got to have Dom Perignon in the Napoleon room, and it was amazing. Yeah. And they just have such beautiful traditions and ceremony with it. So, but what is something special is when you see a vintage, like a vintage champagne or a vintage sparkling wine, because they've taken it from an exceptional year, they've given it some extra love, and it's something a little bit special. Yes. Okay, so if something's been on lees, and I had one recently from a local producer, and it was on lees for like 10 years.
Wow.
And it was incredible.
Wow. Okay.
So that's where you get a really, sophisticated, complex sparkling wine. And I think for everyday drinking, though, we have Tasmania. I've been down to Tasmania and tried a lot of the sparkling wines from that region. Cooler climates make exceptional sparkling wines, especially if they're making it from Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, because they're picking it earlier. And so the acidity is, just on point in those cooler climates. Yeah. So there's some things to look at. What region does it come from? Is it vintage or non-vintage? And just because it's non-vintage doesn't mean it's not good.
That's right. Because, the majority, like you said, the majority are cuvee. They are non-vintage.
But if you want something a little bit special, then you look for a vintage.
It's often a little bit different in the price.
It'll be a lot more different in the price, Wendy. That's the other thing. If I go and buy a vintage Dom Perignon, it's going to cost a lot more, hundreds of dollars more.
So hopefully the takeaway from that is that honestly explore. I think that's the biggest takeaway, because there's definitely no rule to say that champagne is better than sparkling.
we have some incredible sparkling wines here in Australia.
That's right. So, have an explore, try some different things and just find what you like.
And I think that, this is an example of 4 sparkling wines for all different occasions. So if you look at this, this year we did a small limited release Semillon, and it's really crisp and refreshing. So again, if you're thinking seafood, so if we're talking about pairing things here, so I've got a sparkling Semillon, and that you're going to have as a nice palate cleanser. I think of it like sorbet on arrival. Beautiful. Then we've got the traditional, and these been out of the fridge now, so you've got a little bit of condensation on the bottle. So don't open these straight away. Okay, so this is Chardonnay Pinot Noir. This is your all-rounder, everyday sparkling wine. You can't go wrong when you serve that on arrival. Things that I would pair that with is anything salty, fried foods, for example, if you're doing like a little fried canapé, pate en croûte on arrival, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
perfect. If you are serving oysters, for example, oysters and, sparkling wine, champagne, beautiful. Now, then we get into the sparkling red, and the sparkling, this is made from Cabernet. A lot of people, when they try sparkling reds, it's made from Shiraz, for example, in like a lot of South Australian regions will make Shiraz sparkling, where we do a Cabernet, which is delicious. And I love the cassis notes that you get from this. And this is also the surprise wine people don't expect. It's like, this is interesting.
So, isn't it? People don't want to try it, and we've learnt that over the, they go, oh, no. But as soon as they actually pour it into their glass and try it, they're like, wow, I'm converted. I can't even start to tell you how many people will say, oh, no. But then, it's amazing. It's really good. And it's, to me, that's my Christmas day. I love it.
Don't need to wait for Christmas Day.
No, I don't need to do that. But
that's always, I love it. So I always think of it as a Sunday delight. It's like it's getting in the afternoon time. I like to cook on Sundays. And so for me, it's just that nice little pour on a Sunday afternoon. That's me anyway. Yeah. But it's a great food wine. I wouldn't think, I wouldn't hesitate to serve that with duck pancakes.
Yeah.
Such an easy meal to make. You can get the little kits down at the supermarket and that with duck pancakes. Perfect.
Experts.
Pairing. Okay, so this is what we're drinking now. This is our wild pink. So this is made from a muscadella grain. And this wine here is about 8% alcohol. So this is why it's a great brunch wine. And it's think about, what does it taste like to you, Wendy? This is like fairy floss.
It is, isn't it?
Rose.
Fairy floss is probably a little. It's not that.
I'm thinking Persian fairy floss.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So that's that.
It's definitely an off dry compared to these ones, but it's
got a nice clean finish. It does. So it's not. So even though it's got a hint of sweetness, it's still very sippable, and it's a great wine to actually make a wine cocktail out of.
It is.
So
we've had Amelia do our cocktail queen at Sadler's.
So that's a great mixer to use for wine cocktails. Again, having that lower alcohol, when you add a splash of vodka or whatever in there.
It's keeping it respectable.
And I like to serve this as a dessert wine. So brunch wine for sure, definitely a brunch wine. Christmas, morning croissants, that kind of thing.
Perfect with your pavlova on Christmas Day.
Perfect with pavlova.
That is amazing. And I think that's one of your biggest tips that you've given is when we've served it as a dessert wine. Like it's like, of course, it's just sensational.
So if you think of anything that's custard, berries based, I wouldn't do this with chocolate. I would actually do the bluegrass with chocolate.
Yeah.
So you could actually serve this as a dessert wine as well, a sparkling bluegrass, and do like a really nice rich chocolate dessert, like a mousse or something like that. Where with the sparkling wild pink, anything that's berry based is fabulous. And it cleanses the palate after your big meal.
Yeah.
So it just refreshes it and off you go. Cheese, of course, that's going to work.
Everything. Beautiful.
Everything goes with cheese and sparkling.
So what we're going to do, we will put a little bit of a cheat sheet together.
Yes. So I have put together a sparkling guide, a pairing guide, so what to have it, and also our 3 common mistakes of make sure you have enough. Don't let that be a mistake.
I'm not sure that's just a simple one. Always have a few extra in your fridge. So you're not surprised. Your serving temperature is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
So chill these down.
Chill these down.
Chill these
Don't make the
down.
mistake of opening it too warm, especially that sparkling red.
Yeah, keep it in icy cold water submerged.
And of course, champagne stopper.
Of course.
Don't make the mistake of using a teaspoon, because that will do nothing to keep the bubbles in.
Nothing. And let's not forget, sparkling are as equal, I think, in value as a champagne. So,
absolutely. So some incredible sparkling wines.
Absolutely incredible sparkling wines in Australia. So don't be shy to try them, because they're amazing.
You've got here 2 different seals.
Oh, yes. I'm glad you're talking about that,
yeah,
Deb, because we really enjoyed when we heard that pop. There was a emotional reaction almost, like, oh yes,
it is. It's a
celebration. But is it necessary? Is it necessary?
Okay, so this is a crown seal.
Crown seal.
So if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, then you'll see that I've got the sparkling Cabernet, and it's got what we call a crown seal as opposed to a cork seal. Is it any worse or better? That's a perception.
Yes.
It's kind of like, screw cap versus cork in wine. Is it any better or worse? It's still keeping the wine sealed. Cork is always a porous product, so it will age a wine differently to a crown seal, just like a screw cap. We chose to do a crown seal with our sparkling bluegrass. Why? Because you can.
And because it was a new wine, and it was a new adventurous wine, and we wanted to represent that it is a new style and put the crown cap on. And because we're passionate about the fact that it can age beautifully in cork, and just educating people around that as well.
Well, if you see often crown seal wines, somebody that likes a little bit of experimentation, nouveau style of sparkling wines, you'll often see the crown seal.
Yeah, and I think that was a good representation, and one of the reasons that we went that way. But we still keep our other ones in a cork, because it's a 50-50. We're still not, it's a 50-50, because we do love the sound of a pop, don't we?
Now, there's always a sparkling story. Do you have a sparkling story to share?
Look, I think my sparkling story is probably not, it's based on not keeping this wine cold enough. And I can't tell you how many times we have literally sprayed sparkling wine all over us and all over the kitchen cupboards. And so, after 3, 4, 5 times, you start to think, when will that lesson be learned?
Yeah.
But, the other thing we've learned too with this cap is to sort of like let the air out a bit, let it out a bit, pause, and then continue.
Yeah.
And that's been a great tip as well. But keep it chilled. And keep it chilled, and it doesn't happen.
There's a story I have. Okay, so the other
thing. Story. Tell us your story, Tim.
So the other thing is that will make these wines go everywhere is if they're shaken up.
Shaking them.
Okay, so this was many years ago. I was working at the first job I had here in the winery, and I actually decked out a new cellar door. So I did a full refurb in there, and we went to take out the people that had done that for us to lunch, and we went up to Bimbadgin here at Esker, and anyway, so we had a box of wine, and the girl had pulled out the sparkling wine. And do you remember Richard Carlton of 60 Minutes?
I do.
He was sitting next to us at the next table. Anyway, this girl the waitress had opened up the sparkling wine, and of course, as I mentioned to you before, you always got to have your hand over the top of the cork. She opened it, and the cork. She was gentle, but this cork had been sitting in the car on the way here, and it was getting shaken up, and it had been aged as well, this wine. So anyway, it was quite lively, and this cork had popped, and it ricocheted throughout the restaurant, went straight over Rich Carlton's head. The sparkling wine literally went up all over her face. And God love her, she was the ever professional. And she's just standing there with sparkling wine dripping down her face. And it was like, she's like, anyone wants some bubbles? We had everyone in the restaurant was just like, what just happened? And this beautiful waitress was so professional. She kept the straight face. And we were all just like in stitches, just laughing, going, oh my God. Like, can we get you a serviette?
And I think we've gone to tip number 5. but must let it settle. Let it settle.
Don't have it shaken up in a car ride with lots of bouncers in the back seat.
And that's with any wine, really, isn't it, Debbie's, to even, you know, when you have bought wine, if it received it through Australia Post or whatever, let your wine settle.
Let your wine settle. But especially sparkling.
Especially sparkling. Especially let it settle. Thank you.
I think that's it.
That's it. Until next time, wine matters.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.